Hi, I'm Billy Demery, and I'm with you this afternoon to discuss guidance for MAP Growth K2 and MAP Growth 2 to 5. I'm wearing this cap here, and it says one size fits all. One size fits all. Does it really fit all? It's kind of a nice concept. Makes life simpler if everything would fit all, but only a good fit is more likely going to be found in the middle. For those with a larger head, it's probably going to be too tight. For those with a smaller head, it'll be loose and sloppy. It fits me because I must be in the middle. One size fits all is a good concept, but doesn't always work. MAP growth is an adaptive test, so it may sound like a one size fits all, but it really isn't. Let's look at some guidance with MAP growth K2 and MAP growth 2 to 5. Both tests have the word to, which means MAP K2 or MAP K5 is appropriate for the second grade. But not all second graders are, or all second grade classes, the same. There's a vast difference in them. Let's look at some general guidance that will help you to look at your second graders and make a decision for the class and maybe individual students. There are some clear choices in some of the grades. For instance, kindergarten and first grade, the vast majority of those students should be assigned the MAP K2 test. Now, when they get into second grade, many of our students and most students that we've been working with, and if they're making the progress that we're planning for and hoping for, they will be becoming independent readers at the beginning of the second grade or as the second grade progresses. Our goal is to get them to be independent readers. If a student is expected to become an independent reader by the end of second grade, the best choice for the student in the reading map test would be a MAP 2 to 5 test. If the student is an independent reader, and they've had a RIT scores in math greater than 170, then the appropriate place for assigning a student in math would be a 2 to 5 math test. So many of our second graders, and more than likely the majority of our second grade students, would be assigned the 2 to 5 test. But let's look at some of the exceptions. For instance, if a student had a previous MAP score of a 170 or less, that student in reading and math should be assigned the MAP K2 test. The K2 test will align more closely to the student's learning continuum and help the teacher define needs or skills and instructional guidance for that student at that 170 level. Now, if a student, if the test is the right fit, the MAP growth data can be used for both instruction and for growth purposes. So in other words, the alignment of that RIT score will be aligned to the learning continuum, and the beginning of the year RIT score compared to the end of the year RIT score will provide good growth data. That would be assuming that the student has taken the same test at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year. Let's look at some other special situations. Let's say a second grader starts the year in MAP 2 to 5, but scores below the 170, and we do not expect them to become an independent reader by the year's end. We may want, and this might be a student like would have an IEP or a 504 student or in some other support programs. If the student remains in the 2 to 5 group, they will more likely be frustrated because the questions asked of the student will be above their knowledge level, and also the data that the teacher receives will not be aligned to the student's learning continuum. Subsequently, there will be less guidance for the teacher's instruction. If you want a happier student and a teacher more informed, then that student in the second grade that scores less than a 170 should be taking the test in K2 test. Also, the student who is misaligned with the test, if the student's percent correct is lower than 70, in other words, only or lower than 40%, then that means the questions are too hard for the student and they're getting the majority of them wrong. That student should definitely be in the K2 test. Now, if the student is getting above 60% of the percent correct, that would be an indicator that the question bank is becoming a little bit too easy for the student and they're getting more questions correct than the normal 40 to 60% that we like. Grades 2 students who is an independent reader and is doing very successful in MAP 2 to 5 test, you're getting scores above the 170 and the learning continuum was aligned to the student's needs and you're getting good instructional information, but that is in reading. Now, if that same independent reader with good scores in the reading gets a 150 score in math, for instance, that would be an indicator that that student should be taking the K2 test in math. It's perfectly appropriate and will give you the best information for the student if the student takes a 2 to 5 test in one subject and the K2 in a different subject. The thing that we're looking for, like I was mentioning earlier, we're looking for guidance for the teacher, instructional guidance, and that would be only if the test is the right fit. Now, if the student is, let's say we have one of the students that gets a 190 in reading and they're in the kindergarten, or they get a 190 in their first grade and they get a 190. These are our exceptional students. Now, these are students that we often don't have large numbers of these students, but we often have a number of these students in our classroom. We're always really happy with them. But if I have a first grader and they're getting a 190 or above RIT score, their percentile is going to be really high. It probably might even be up in the 90s or 99 percentile. That means that perhaps this test isn't the best fit for them. Now, what we can do is kind of a cross-check. We can look again in the percent correct information. That's information is provided in one of the reports that your school administrator can download, that percent correct. And if the student is getting a 190 or higher and they're in a kindergarten or first grade, more than likely their percent correct is going to be way above 160, or at least it's going to be above 160. We would like that percent correct in that 40 to 60 range. Now, if the student is getting way more questions right than 60% of the questions, that would mean the questions bank is a little bit too easy for them. So we've got to bump them up into the higher question bank, which would mean we would take those students and move them up into the 2 to 5 test. Then they'll become a little more challenged in the questions. Now, what you're going to find if a student has been taking the K2 test and we move them up into the 2-5, there's a pretty good chance that those students' percent is going to drop down, their RIT score is going to drop down, and their percent correct is going to drop down more than likely into that 40 to 60 range, what we're looking for. If that's where it's at, then we would have good alignment to the learning continuum. That will indicate where the student needs to focus in on to get that growth. And our growth data will also probably start working better for us because it will give us a truer picture of what that student is doing. So there are a number of things that we can do with the MAP test in the K2 and the 2 to 5. Remember that these tests are your teacher tools. Not all students are the same. We might have the vast majority of our students taking the 2 to 5 test in second grade, but there could very well be a few students, and again, it could be some of those students in those special programs that need that extra focus. You will get more accurate data if we have the test aligned to the student's abilities. If the test is too easy, their scores are going to be inflated and will giving us inaccurate information. If it's too hard, the students are frustrated and your data is not going to align to what the student actually knows and is not going to provide good growth data. So it's important to align the test to the student's needs and check out the growth and guidance information before we do the assignment. Thank you. I'm Billy Demery, and have a good day.